Lead the Team Nation. Woo, welcome back. I've got a great one in store for you today with Tom Walker, who is CEO of DroneUp, a leading technology company focused on commercial drone solutions. They tackle last mile delivery across multiple industries, including medical, construction, food and beverage, retail, and smart city logistics. You probably didn't know that the world of drones covered so many industries. Now, DroneUp, back to them, was founded back in 2016, but the last few years have been incredible. In 2022, DroneUp opened 34 delivery hubs in 6 states in partnership with Walmart. And to support this growth, they also opened up a dedicated training facility for flight engineers in Virginia. Now, prior to working in technology, back to Tom, he spent almost 17 years as a naval officer, pioneering military and government digital reform through extensive reprogramming and web enablement of computer systems to support both U.S. and international special forces. He's also served as an advisor to the White House on technology innovation and its impact on the emerging workforce. We're going to dig in deep on drones today, everybody. Tom, welcome to Lead the Team.
Hey, Ben, thank you for having me.
Y'all, we have not covered this. 178 plus episodes. We have missed the boat on this, and we're making up for it today with Tom. Tom, what do leaders today most need to understand about what's going on in the drone industry?
Well, it's a great question. And I think, just a few years ago, people were still even trying to figure out what drones could do. Now, I think we're starting to understand the capabilities that they bring to revolutionize the way some people do business and certainly normalize the way others do business. But the important thing to note today is that, I said a few years ago, I was in an interview like this, and somebody said, what do you call people in your industry, in this drone industry? Do you call them pioneers? You call them visionaries? I said, no, I call them batshit crazy. And here's why. We started a business in an industry not knowing exactly what it was we were going to be selling to customers who didn't really know yet what it was they were going to be buying in an industry that the government had yet to figure out how to regulate.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's about as risky of a startup as you could do, right? Now, move forward a couple of years. Now people are starting to see how we can use drones, from the aerial data collection, cell tower inspections, and you name it. But now also in this final mile delivery, and the numbers are staggering in terms of the safety and the efficiency. But now the last part of that is the regulations. And up until about a year ago, we weren't really seeing any movement in the regulations to clarify exactly how we were going to operate these things. And now finally, the industry's come together. The FAA has come together. Congress has come together. We just dropped some legislation a couple of days ago to really start laying the pathway for true beyond visual line of sight. I think leaders need to know that now is the time. If they're not using drones in their business or in their organization, they certainly should be having a conversation about it, because we're really seeing significant impacts and improvements in businesses all over the country.
Okay, awesome. I want to get to those questions that leaders need to be thinking about for drones, but I want to clarify something first. So you mentioned the regulation. So for leaders, and make sure I'm getting this right, you to operate a drone commercially, you have to be able to maintain vision, line of sight to the actual drone, right? Like, so you can't fly it miles and miles away and not be able to see it. You have to maintain visibility, which has limited the commercial opportunity. So
absolutely. There are some waivers that are out there that allow people to do it, but they're few and far between. And it's rule by exception. And what we are trying to do, and what's really going to make a significant difference, is when there becomes a standard for which operators like us can operate beyond visual line of sight. It will enable you to do further inspections, to actually do things that where the drone is capturing enough data that it becomes more valuable than having to do it in the traditional means. And that's very close. I think that we're going to see that beyond visual line of sight within the next year, which is, I'd never been able to say that.
So for company leaders listening right now, they may think of drones in 2 different ways. One is it's like a little toy that you have on your lawn and you're flying it into your neighbor's house. I'm not saying I did that, but I might have on accident because the wind's blowing it over. And then on the other side, you hear these stories on like the Journal podcast or the daily podcast where they're being used in like warfare.
Right.
Okay. In between that, though, is probably the business opportunity. How would
Right.
you describe for someone who's only used to hearing about the warfare side or the toy side to what's commercially possible?
There's two different sides in the service industry. That's what we call the aerial data collection services, where we fly
Mm,
over, we do inspections and whatever. And then there's delivery. But let's focus on the aerial data collection, because that's where a lot of business folks don't quite really realize. If you think
mm,
about it, these drones, these unmanned aerial vehicles, are new, and obviously they're the new component in this ecosystem. But the sensors that they use have been around, whether it's a
mm.
thermal sensor, whether it's a visual sensor, whether it's
Okay.
some type of other specialized sensors. Those have been around for a long time. But what the drones are allowing us to do are to take those sensors and put them affordably in places. So, for example, a
Mm,
large manufacturing facility that would have a heating and cooling sensor test done by flying over using thermal and measuring the different temperatures throughout the roof to identify potential mechanical failures or heating and cooling leaks. We can now take that would cost $25,000 for that manned aircraft to fly over that. We can
mm.
now take a drone with a thermal sensor and for about $700 fly over and get the exact same result. So
Wow.
if you think
Okay.
about the things that you're already doing, whether that's having people
Mm,
climb a cell tower to do an inspection, and we know that a handful of people are injured every year in these, we can now take a drone, we can get high resolution data, put it through various different analytics programs and get the very same result without having to put people up on those towers. So if you think about it purely from a being able to see something safer and more efficiently and more cost effective than you've ever been able to do it before, that's where drones really are playing a key component.
mm.
I say cell tower over and over because that's probably the fastest growing sector of our aerial inspection business are the cell towers.
Because they're so tall and they're often placed in random places all around, and they're not always easy to get to.
They're
A
not always
dangerous
easy to get
job.
to. And then there's a lot of processes you have to go through to be able to get the permit to climb the tower. And then, you got to climb the tower. You got to kind of take pictures. You've got to make inspections, and then you got to climb down. Then you got to go process that data. By the time we're done flying the tower, that data is already in process and usually complete within 30 to 45 minutes. So
Okay.
it cost about 6% of what it costs to have, believe it or not, to have somebody climb the tower, inspect the tower. It's much more cost effective. But
Wow.
we see that all the way
Hmm.
across. Roof inspections following storms, residential roof inspections. We do inspections for a couple of the largest insurance companies in the world. And we can go out and do an entire neighborhood in a fraction of the time that it takes a roof inspector to go around, pull a ladder off a truck, climb up on the roof, walk around. Again, more rapid response, more affordable, and safer.
Hmm.
I mean, that's that. If you kind of wrap everything up into the benefit drones being the business, I would put them under those three categories.
Wow. Okay. So let's say you have a COO or a CFO listening today, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a manufacturer, and we're getting blasted by inflationary pressures, and we need a way to save cost right now. What's the question that they should ask themselves to sort of as they like? What's the mental model of what they should be asking themselves to know if like DroneUp or using drones is a real cost savings opportunity for them?
Well, I think that one of the things we always say is we'll never know your business like you know your business, but we know how to operate drones and collect data. The real question for organizations becomes, how do I process that data in a manner that makes my company more efficient or makes my product better, right?
Okay.
And so one of the things, I'll go back and tell you a story, is when we first started this business back in 2016, 2017, we just assumed that every insurance company on the planet was going to call us and say, okay, we want you now to go out and do inspections following storms. And nothing, right? I mean,
Hmm.
and then we got a couple of opportunities and we went and did them. And then they called us back and they said, yeah, that's great. We love the data that you collected. It's beautiful. We won't be needing your services anymore. And the question was, well, why? And so when we went and sat down, what we realized was we were collecting such an enormous amount of data, new data, high resolution data that we could run through all these processes. But when you went into their internal process in the organization, they had a way of doing that. The inspectors climbed the roofs. They faxed in the roof report. The people sitting in front of these desks would type in the roof report. It then had a process that it went through. They had no way to even take our data and ingest it into their processes without continually re-engineering their processes. Well, then you go, okay, well, why don't you re-engineer your processes? Well, we haven't had the opportunity to recognize the value that this brings. So when you're talking about bringing drones in as a component of your business, it isn't just we can collect better data. It's, okay, what does that data do? Does that data really help us? In other words, did they really, and this is what we found out, did they really need all of the data that we were collecting in order to adjudicate an insurance claim? I mean, we were giving them 100 times more. It took us working with them over a period of 18 months to say, okay, what do you really need? Re-engineer our processes to collect only what they needed, then make our data move into their process in a way that didn't disrupt the system. So I think one of the things I always say to people is, rather than you sitting down at your desk in your conference room and saying, how can we use drones, or us coming in and just pitching you on how you can use drones, let's sit down and talk about the data. It's not about the drone. It's about the data that we collect. What format do you need it in? Is there data we could collect that you're not collecting now because it's not feasible? That would have a fundamental impact. So what I would tell leaders is reach out to an organization like ours, and let's have a conversation. Even if it's not for today, I promise you drones will be a part of your business processes in the next 2 years, or 2 to 3 years. So start the conversation today.
Wow. So I'm experiencing that story like a Pixar movie. One for the kids, one for the adults. So, there, congratulations on figuring that out. And so it's a very interesting process to how drones can amplify and create opportunity for business. But it's even cooler to me, the leadership move that you made, where you're like, look, I'm excited about drones. I can feel your energy today. The whole company is probably jazzed up about what we can do. But at some point you have to go in as a leader, remind us, like, why are we in this, right? Drones to a lot of people are like a toy, and they get excited about it, and they're doing all this data, and I can see me geeking out over the data. But you asked the question, well, what are they? What's the insurance company? What can they handle? What do they really need? And how can we make sure that we're giving them just that? Because I can see you going in and just driving all these amazing slides and presentations. At the end of the day, they're like, how do we even use this stuff? Because we're processing thousands of claims and we just can't get there. And so you kind of reeled back a little bit. And it sounds like you really started with them first. And as I think about that for my business too, think about what's most valuable to the customer and make sure that's so obvious to them that they can immediately use it and get a benefit out of it. And it sounds like from that point on, you guys were able to get traction in that industry. Is that right?
It wasn't just that industry. Point? I mean, and your point is a good point. It's actually, we rebooted with every industry that we were working with. We learned this lesson that when the phone call would come in, we would start with a series of questions. What data are you wanting to collect? We have 3 A's that we always ask in any of these processes. Is it actionable? Is it achievable? And is it affordable? And meaning, is the data that we're collecting, is it actionable? Does it create actionable opportunities for the organization? Is it achievable? Meaning, is it something we can do over and over again and get the exact same data in the same quality so that you can use it? And then third, is it affordable enough? Because we recognize as business people that we don't come in day one and replace a process. This has to be done in parallel, because until they understand and fine tune how to replace the data they're using today with the data that we're collecting. So we have to make it affordable in those early days. And affordable doesn't necessarily mean cheap. Affordable means that it's worth the investment that they need to make, and they're willing to make the investment, and we're willing to work with them initially on what's probably a limited process opportunity. But we know that once our data starts to become ingested into their processes, then we're going to continue to have a customer for a very long time.
So good. And this is the way technology changes occur in industries, probably, like if you look back over history. People are early, they get excited, but you have to sort of get through. I don't remember all the different levels of innovation, but I know the laggards are on the far side of the equation. It takes a long time to get down, but once you get there, the momentum's incredible. But yeah, it takes time. So for the listeners, I'm just pointing out some things that Tom's talking about. One, you just got the Cliff Notes version on what's going on in the drone world right now. And Tom's also talking about how you drive innovation across multiple industries when you have a great technology. And also probably how hard was it in those days when you're walking in, you're talking to a company and you see so many things that your customer could be taken advantage of and be improved. Like you see a whole new world for them, but they're not ready to hear that yet.
Right.
How hard is it to sort of swallow all the excitement and start where they are?
Well, I think that comes from being in business for a few years. I'll tell you a funny story. Before in between the military and here, I worked for my wife's company. She was CEO of a technology company that developed mobile applications. And I remember I was in a presentation in Chicago to a very large company. You would know the name. I won't say it. And I was pitching them, me and my team, on developing a mobile app for them. And we're excited about mobile apps. We just knew that what is going to change the world. That's actually what got me my little stint in the White House was mobile technologies. But
okay, all right.
But when I remember presenting, and I remember the guy sitting in the front of the room, and he was an elderly gentleman, had been the CEO of the company for quite a few years, and he said, "Tom, I'm just going to be candid with you. We think this mobile app thing is going to pass. So we're going to sit and wait for that to happen." And I remember just shaking I wanted to pull my hair out. I had hair then, and thinking to myself, you really think this is going to pass? And so I learned then that I could pitch it as hard as I wanted to pitch it. The truth of the matter is people are motivated for their reasons and not mine. So the best thing that I can do is understand what motivates them and see if there's a way we can fit this in. It's kind of the same with, philosophy we've taken with drones is we don't really do a lot of outbound conversations because we really wait until businesses come to us. And we do have a lot of calls where they say, "Hey, we're just thinking about this. What can you tell us about drones?" And we love having those conversations. But the conversations we really like are when a new leader comes into an organization, or there's a regime change or a pivot in focus, and they say, "Okay, now we want to look at all of these different technologies and see how we can optimize the organization." And we get to come in at that base level of organizations where maybe they're looking at re-engineering their ERPs, they're looking at other types of optimizations throughout the businesses, and drones. Because one of the things, even in delivery, I tell people, and they sometimes are surprised to hear, I say drones are not the answer. Drones are not the answer to the final mile. Over the next 10 years, you're going to see the last mile totally revolutionized, and it's going to be a triangle. It's going to be drones, it's going to be autonomous vehicles, and it's going to be electric vehicles. That's going to be the triangle of the last mile. And so we kind of go into it with humility. Humility is a thing you'll hear in our culture. You'll hear if you spend any time with the company, you'll hear humility. It's something we preach every day. And it is the humility to understand that we're one leg of those three there. Same way back on the traditional services. When we're talking to companies, we're not in there with our capes on saying, "Hey, look, we got the drones, we can solve everything." We just know that these are data collection devices that can be used to augment or replace current data collection methods, and hopefully fit into a bigger, broader process of optimization within an organization. That's really how we go into and have that conversation.
Love that. And it's a good reminder for us. I love that story about the guy who's like, "Hey, this app thing is going to pass." Like,
it's a fad. That's what he called it. It was a fad.
Yeah. This app thing's a fad, of course. And it goes back to understanding how the brain works and how decisions are made, and how a lot of the research that I've seen shows that decisions are made in the limbic part of the brain, which do not respond to rational thought or numbers.
Right.
It's based on trust and emotion. And so if you overwhelm them, or if we present and we overwhelm them with an idea that they're not quite ready for, like an app, I guess, for this guy, he's like, that's never going to happen. And so it's a great message for all leaders to be thinking about this. Although I'll say it's important to introduce these conversations. Leaders really, I believe it's a leadership responsibility in organizations for them to introduce new conversations. Maybe the company's not ready for it, but the conversation's got to start somewhere. And I like, one of the things I've already liked about this interview is you've given them a lot of ways to kickstart, to introduce the drone conversation into their company in a way that maybe they can start to wrap their minds around it. What's your favorite drone success story?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. You know, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories, and I think it's a success. And I'll start it out by saying one of the things I like to say all the time is that, 4 years ago, you had a better chance of getting hit by a stray golf ball sitting on your toilet than you did the media running a positive story about drones, right? Every story was negative. Drones, if drones were in the news, it was a negative story, right? And then when the pandemic occurred and we were given our first opportunity to work with Walmart, it was to do COVID test kit delivery, right? Contactless free. We would fly the COVID test kit to your house. And there were a variety of reasons why we did this with Walmart, or Walmart did this with us. But one of my favorite stories I like to tell is you could either drive to the Walmart and drive through a line and get your COVID test right there, or you could go online and order it and we would deliver it to you by drone. And so there was these people in North Las Vegas, several of them, and they were like, I am not driving up to the Walmart. I'm not getting in my car. I'm not taking any chances. Just fly it to me. And we would fly it, deliver it. They would go out and they'd get it. And then they would get in their car and they would drive to the Walmart to tell us how cool the experience was. And just to have them like drive up there after they said they would never drive up there. And then all of a sudden, the lines of people who just wanted to learn more about it and ask us questions, and the chance to do that. And then we suddenly saw that's the first time we had a media story about drones in the news, and it was a pretty big story. And then we went to El Paso and we were doing the same thing in El Paso. And one of the comments that was made by somebody in El Paso was, it's so great to see a new technology like this at a time when the world really needs it. And I think hearing that and seeing the narrative shift over the next 2 years to where more and more stories were positive about drones, and more communities were reaching out, wanting us to come into the community and start conducting delivery operations for them. I think it all goes back to that very first, opportunity to do it. Being able to do it. We went into that operation with Walmart over a 9-week period. The goal for us was to do about 100 deliveries just to prove into neighborhoods that had never been done. We did almost 1,300 over that 9-week period. So that operation was a success from start to finish, both from the ability to prove to the FAA and prove to the communities that we could do it safely, and that the communities wouldn't come out rioting against us. But then, also the opportunity to shift the narrative from the public standpoint.
Yeah. The pandemic was such a terrible time for the world, but also companies that stepped up and leaders that stepped up and were willing to embrace the opportunity found huge momentum moments like that. And I just
we grew 1,004% in the 12 months following the initial kind of serious notice of the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it's just remarkable. And I think we're going to hear more and more about these stories, but sometimes you got to dig and you got to understand. And in smaller companies like yourself that are more nimble and more flexible, you're able to seize on the opportunity.
Yeah.
Your background, Tom, is quite interesting. And here you are, you're doing apps in the White House, you're doing drones, you have a naval background. What has your career been like through this? Like what what were maybe a couple of those moments, inflection points that led you to where you are today, sort of leading the drone revolution?
Yeah. Well,
Or evolution in some ways too, maybe.
right. Well, there's a lot of us leading. I mean, I'm just one of those leaders, but I'm humbled by the opportunity to be one of them. I think the biggest thing, you can almost start today and work backwards and tell that story. One of the things about our company that we're known for is our culture. Yes, we're the largest drone delivery company in the U.S., and we're probably among the largest services companies in the United States. But if you go backwards and you look at our company today, we grew from 12 people in January of 2021 to 72 people in January of 2022 to 600 today. And when I saw that, I knew that growth was going to happen. I went back to the very beginning at 12. So if you turn back time when we were 12 people, I brought in my chief people officer, Chris Cravey, and I said, here's the thing. I said, I have served my entire career in small teams. I was on submarines as a nuclear engineer. It's a small team that takes that thing out for 6 months, and you don't get to pick up new writers along the way. You got to do it with who you got to do it with, and you got to have a really strong, great team of good culture. And then I left there and I went to the special operations community, small teams, got to get a lot of done, got to trust each other, got to take care of each other, to working with my wife's company, which was a small kind of tiger team, special ops team, to here. And I said, Chris, how do we keep that small team culture, that thing that I've been used to my entire career, that thing that I know how to lead? I know how to lead small teams. How do I have the largest small team on the planet? And so we really started about building that culture, those fundamental core values that we live by, that today we still live by. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. We grew that growth rate, I told you, with a 98% retention rate. The company's 52% diverse, 26% veterans. It's such, on paper, it's something to be very proud of. In person, it's something to just adore. And I think you asked me how those things, it was, how do I fight to keep small company culture regardless of how big? And so far, I'm proud to say I think we've done a pretty good job.
So what is it like working? Like, think back to those times, small team culture. What is it like to work in a small team or small team culture? What's the experience like?
So in our culture, for example, here, and I'm going to say that here because I'm going to see if that answers your question, because small team cultures are what matter. One of the things that we do is we empower people to make decisions. As I've worked with larger companies, I see the bureaucracy. I see how difficult it is just to get an answer sometimes. And so one of the things that we sat down with, and we said with Chris, and says, what is it about the small team that we like? What is that? And it's that we can make decisions quickly. Okay, good. How do we make decisions quickly if we're 600 people? And the answer is, give people a blueprint to make a decision, and they'll make the right decision every time, right? So for us, it's simple. Everybody that comes in, the very first day, they hear from me the following. If you need to make a decision, you can always make it, and it's easy. The first question, is it right for our people? The second, is it right for our brand? The third, is it right for our industry? If it is, make the decision. You don't have to go up the chain of command. And a lot of times people come back and say, well, wait a minute, you didn't mention the customer. And I said, because I don't want the customer getting in the way of us taking care of each other first. And so that's the decision tree. And that's an example of, that small company culture. I mean, people are making decisions on the deck plates. As long as it meets the 3 criteria, nobody's ever going to get in trouble for it.
What great guidance. And I hope people are listening or taking notes of that. And you're right. I think if you take care of each other, you're going to naturally take care of the customer.
It's just going to happen. That's what I tell everybody.
People are kind of in it for themselves, or they're confused, they start making decisions that probably don't help the customer as much. But if you're taking care of each other, you're like, yeah, this is how we operate. This is what we do. I can see how that really can give it that small team culture vibe, even at your rapid expansion rate. Man, that's explosive growth from on an employee front. What's your secret to recruiting such great talent?
Everybody that interviews with us, even the people who don't get jobs, I get feedback from them that they just feel a real sense of people first with us, and pride, but in a different way, right? So one of the other things I say to employees the very first day, teammates when they come on board, is we don't gloat, we don't beat our chest, we succeed or fail as a team, and we don't fail. And it's that constant kind of push. People always ask me, what's the one thing, if you could inject every new employee with one characteristic, what would it be? Right. And I'm like, that one's easy. I know the answer to that one. And that's humility, right? Mm-hmm. Because in our organization, humility is just powerful. I tell people in my organization every day, strength without humility is just a weapon. But strength with humility is power to influence people to get things done, power to make the right decisions, power to hold people accountable, power to be willing to be held accountable, those things. So we never, ever, you'll never hear us say we're the best. You'll never hear us say we're the greatest. You'll never hear that in any materials that we market or anybody that speaks on behalf of the company. It is a culture of people first and humble operations.
Well, it flows from the top, people. And yeah, I would say I tried to say you were the lone person revolutionizing the drone industry. You're like, I'm proud to be part of multiple leaders that are doing that. So I thought that was, I totally get that now. When's the time you had an unexpected twist or failure in your career, and how did it lead to your growth or success on down the road?
Yeah. So funny question. So I would say that would be the start of this company. So, I told you I was working for my wife's company. She had built up a very successful company, was doing very well. Mm-hmm. I came in and started working for her and worked for her for several years, and then got this idea to start the drone business as a side thing. This was supposed to be a side project. I was going to borrow a developer here or there. But wouldn't impact our business. And, within about 6 months, I had 80% of all the developers working for me, but I had no money. I couldn't pay them. So I was just running up this huge debt. And, she finally pulled me aside one day and she said, I'm going to have to stop treating you like my husband for just a moment and treat you like a customer. You need to come up with a way to pay me. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I probably should. And so I was like, well, this is
date night got pretty interesting at that point, I suspect.
Yeah, the whole conversation, and it goes home with you.
Tom, you're buying.
And so I said, well, that's easy. I'll go raise money. I'd never raised money before. I'd never, ever raised money from investors, but I was like, how hard can it be? This is a really good idea. The problem was I didn't have a business plan. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, and I really didn't have a path to profit. Heck, I didn't even really have a path to revenue. And so I was going out pitching this, and I was incapable of raising money. I mean, at that time, I couldn't get anybody interested. And we started slowing down development. I mean, at one point we actually considered, which is scary to think about today, we actually made the decision to just terminate the company. And I actually called a friend of mine who was an attorney, and I said, hey, how do you shut down a company? I've never done this before. And he was like, why would you shut it down? I'm like, I don't know how to raise money. He said, come on, let's go to dinner. I'll teach you how to raise money. And then
like a good dinner.
It was a good dinner. And 2 weeks later, we had raised our first $250,000 and we were off to the races. So, I think the twist was almost conceding defeat and then finding a pathway to victory by trying to talk to the person to help me consummate the defeat.
Oh, I love that story. And that dinner was worth $250,000. So yeah, I hope it was a good dinner.
I think in the end, it's going to prove to be worth a little bit more than that even, but yeah, it was a good dinner. And, and he's an investor and still serving on the board. So
hopefully he's on the Christmas list too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, what a great story. Okay. Well, Tom, Man, this has been a good interview. I've got a lot more questions that we did not get to. I feel like I should open it up to you though, because your stories are just so engaging and humorous. So take it. So you choose your own adventure. What question did we not get to that you have a story you want to share? Or lay a couple of leadership success strategies on us that you want to impart. Either one. Or another way you want to take this, but just roll with it.
I'm not really good at that. I will tell you that I think that one of the things that I've mentioned our people first, and we're really proud of that, right? But another thing that we have these sayings in the company, and people matter most is number one. You'll see that everywhere. People matter most. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that when I go out into the field and I go visit with people that I've never met with out in Orlando at our hubs or whatever, and I come up to them, they shake my hand and they tell me, I love working here because a lot of companies say people matter most. It's true here, right? And so it's not a tagline. It is, I believe, one of the most important keys to our success. One of the other sayings that I say to the teams when we have team meetings is, be proud but not arrogant, confident but not cocky, and don't tell others how you're better. Tell them how you're different. Let them decide if it's better. And it is, again, that whole thing of keeping everybody level, happy and proud that we're doing what we're doing, but understanding, when we're out in the field, we had an old saying in the Navy, you've probably heard it before, and that is one aw shit wipes out 99 attaboys. We can fly 99% of the time and do everything perfectly. But that one incident, that one accident, that one time that you let revenue get in the way of safety, that one time can wipe out all of that success. And because we have a leadership role in the industry, now I told you, I'll never say we're the best. I'll never say we're the greatest, but acknowledging leadership is not bragging and it's not being arrogant. It's accepting the responsibility that you have as leaders in the industry. I tell the team all the time, we make a mistake, it doesn't just hurt DroneUp. It doesn't just hurt the customer. It hurts the entire industry. And so come to work every day with the weight of that responsibility, but the confidence that you can do it and do it right, and then go home proud of the job that you did that day. That's how we run the company. That's how I lead the company.
Whew. Man, Tom, thank you for coming on the show today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.